Oh, sorry, guys. You just caught me reading the new Discord that I set up. No, not really. There's not much going on there right now, but I have set up a Discord. Um, Feel free to join if you wanna, I don't know, be part of the little community that I'd like to try and build and foster and uh, etc. That's where I think I'm gonna ideally have people send links from now on. Be nice to just kind of have it all in one place. And some people aren't fans of Twitter for good reason, to be fair. So yeah, there's a link down there. 4K live, nice. Yeah, there's a link down there. Join the Discord if you want. But yeah, other than that, welcome to the stream. And let's jump into the first shot. Cool. Hey guys. Welcome. So this shot is from Simon Scales. Thanks for sending this in, Simon. Hey Christos, how you doing? Welcome. So let's give it a play. Let me know if the audio is okay for you guys, because last week it was like double audio and it was pretty terrible. But... It's a long one, this one, but it's cool. Yeah, so I'm not too familiar with TF2. I do know the name TF2. Um, Simon was saying that this is done in SourceForge, which I'm also not familiar with, so I'm not sure that makes any difference to the review. Audio is all good, awesome. Thank you guys. Yeah, so let's walk through this and see if there's some things we can maybe improve. So I think overall, the whole thing is feeling quite long. And I think that's just because the things that are happening, like the storytelling beats, are just, they all seem to like take quite long. And that can be something that gives a character character, and it can be like a character trait thing. And maybe that's a good choice. But I think when all of the things are like that, it just becomes, I don't know, there's just ways you could maybe like compress those things that are happening to make them, to tell the same story in less time, and it's just going to be more engaging. There's a couple of points where I think to myself, okay, next bit now, like next bit of the story, like it's almost I hesitate to use the word boring, but like when you're, it's like if you're reading a book and like they just keep embellishing the story, and rather than just like boom and then this happens and then it's just getting to the point quick, and I guess being efficient with the kind of use of that time that you've got the viewer's attention for, to tell it, like cram in as much story as possible. So like that whole section kind of feels like he's doing all of the movements and the mechanics are feeling pretty good. It just kind of feels like there's some unnecessary information in there, which is kind of detracting away from the story itself. So if we think about like story beats, he's obviously, I guess, putting away his gun. I don't know why, because he doesn't have a gun. And then doing a stretch. So, you know, you need to keep the start pose, the putting away pose, and then the mechanics that lead to the stretch. And I feel like the mechanics that lead to the stretch, the way it's timed, they're kind of acting like they're a story point, and they're kind of like being a beat right now. Like this whole the step over and the weight shift is kind of like into that. I feel like it could personally just be he puts away the gun and goes straight into it, and that's going to be a lot more engaging for the viewer and just tell the story a bit quicker. And it's just one tiny part, but kind of throughout the whole animation, doing little things like that, just kind of trying to get from the interesting part to the interesting part as quick as possible while still kind of maintaining like solid body mechanics and believability in the animation is gonna just improve the whole thing, to be honest. So there, I guess if we look at the taking out the frying pan as an example, it's like we go from the stretch, which is cool. I like how the stretch happens and you have a beat for the objects to come out as well. It's very cool. It then feels like we kind of go into mechanics world again. I'm going to call it mechanics world because it's like a different world from the story world that we're trying to kind of tell our viewer. And the mechanics is kind of telling us that this is a believable thing, but in terms of story, that's kind of all it's doing, and it just needs to serve its purpose of kind of being there to aid the story. And at the moment, it's kind of acting against the story because we're kind of treating those body mechanics parts, getting very theoretical here. This is very abstract stuff, I guess. I'm trying to, but basically, it's just when the body mechanics aren't telling a story, like dwelling on them for too long is just gonna like take away from that story, I guess. Unless it's for a character like reason, like oh he's really lazy, so he's like oh I can't bother to take out my frying pan, you know. So if we look at the amount of frames, we go from sort of 86 to 181. That's 4 seconds to basically tell the story of he's stretched and he's gonna relax with a nice meal, I guess. He's got out his frying pan. You know, the story beats are he's stretching and then he is about to cook something. So I feel like 4 seconds can probably be trimmed down a bit to just kind of get there a bit quicker, you know? We can kind of come out of this. Now I feel like you can go, and then if you really wanted to be super efficient with it, you could go, you know, from this to, and then bring the frying pan straight out. And then if you want to like just amplify that even more, he can be stretching, and then I guess he could sit down while he takes it out as well. And then he's in the pose, which is telling us the story of the frying pan, and that he's sitting down by the fire, ready to use the frying pan. I don't hate the idea of like bringing out the frying pan and then sitting down. I feel like that's cool. It makes more of a thing of like, haha, I've got a frying pan, and then a sit down. I just think the key poses in here that we have, like taking it out, it feels a little like linear going into this. I feel like we want to get out of this pose into this kind of like reaching into his animation pocket as quick as possible. And then I guess the next key pose that tells the story is getting into this. So if you can just into going back and then boom, rather than kind of like slowly going there and then kind of dwelling here and then bringing it out kind of slowly while doing these kind of weight shifts. And for me, something else which is complicating this whole story is why he wouldn't. I guess if for rig reasons or whatever reason the frying pan needs to be on that leg, then fair enough. But if there's a way that the frying pan could be, I realize I haven't drawn anything at all yet. If there's a way the frying pan could be over here, then he doesn't have to pass it to the other hand. He can just go frying pan, and into the animation. So I guess the timing in there is kind of feeling like you want to get the bacon out and hold it and then put it down. At the moment, it's kind of like the time that we're using for that, we're kind of using to slowly get the bacon out and then put down. I'd focus on trying to think about your animation in terms of like holding poses and key drawings. Even though it's 3D, it's still a 2D image, it's still a drawing. So if you can come out and hold the bacon there, ready to drop into the pan, and he's, maybe the things that he does around the bacon, which is still tells that story of his attitude and his character, and then he can, drop the bacon in. Using that time for the mechanics is kind of like wasting the time that you could be using to tell more of the story, you know? Cool. I mean, I understand that for gameplay reasons, there's going to be an idol there. That's all good. Cool. And then I think the timing of the bacon flip at the end is cool. And then I assume he goes into the same idol again, frying the bacon. I guess one thing I would say about the idol is it feels quite repetitive, and for something that long, I feel like you could just add more fun in there. Have more fun. Make it an idol that doesn't feel like you're just watching an idol and like just waiting for the next storytelling beat. If he's maybe going ooh, and trying to have some fun with it, or just doing some movements which are like not repetitive as we have now, then it's just going to add some more interest and more character and more story into your animation. So I guess in terms of like posing, now that we spoke about like overall timing of the whole thing, kind of feels like I said, we're kind of spending too long sort of doing this transition into this, and I think the big step over and the kick with the leg and stuff is not helping that. I think you can just keep it simpler. So he would kind of go into, maybe there's still a slight weight adjust, but the amount that he is like going over to screenwriting and stuff is just making it take much longer to resolve that motion. And at the end of the day, the quicker you can get from the last storytelling pose into the next storytelling pose, while still maintaining the character and still maintaining believability of the animation, the better. All right, Marcus, welcome. So I think I would look at just making this, a lot simpler. Maybe not such a big movement over. It would also be nice to get an antic pose. Just reacting to something Marcus said. I actually got rid of the Marcus, so it's a bit of a sensitive subject. I feel like there could be an antic pose into, you're doing this big stretch back. It would be cool if you did like a hunched over pose. So that maybe in here he's, a little bit leant back. It's just an idea. I feel like it could help storytelling wise. Just to show, oh, he's got a bad back. What am I drawing here? All right. Ooh. And then this can potentially be pushed a little more. And it'd be cool to, I know this is a gameplay animation, but it would be cool to get a nicer silhouette. And it feels like maybe this arm that you have is just hiding a little bit. Be cool to get, yeah, nicer silhouette. I don't hate that you've got the head tilted forward as he goes back, but yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah, and then like I said, like the mechanics of this could be simplified. The state, the posing, I guess, when he has the frying pan. Depends how cartoony you'd want to get it, but an example is could do. Oh god, drawing a frying pan. Lovely stuff, Hey, I have a frying pan. I think this is a pretty nice pose. I think not to get too nitpicky on like polished stuff, but there's kind of like a little hit here in the hips. Just look at that line, and then it kind of like does the rest of it spacing. I feel like you would kind of just lower yourself maybe, and then it would be an ease out into that lowering, and then as you hit would be the greatest spacing. So you'd kind of just you almost fall back when you sit down on a chair. Did you get that little fish check then, Marcus? Fish check. So I'd just make sure you're not like easy, unless he's like trying to do a squat and then he falls down, but I'm sure he's not trying to do that. There just doesn't seem to be like a storytelling reason why we would like ease into that and hold at the bottom here and then fall backwards. You would get maybe a slight hesitation in there, which is possibly where this is coming from, like from reference. But it wouldn't necessarily be in like the whole center of mass holding in that position and then dropping. I think this is feeling quite nice. I'm happy with it up to this pose, and I feel like this pose could be pushed just to get some like clearer silhouette. Start with the bacon. Oh god, this is gonna be bad. It wasn't too bad. Yeah, I feel like just getting some. That is what I said. I was tricking you, Marcus. They were there the whole time, hidden. Yeah, just getting some negative space in this bacon, just to, I guess, if you take it out of your pocket and you go, "Ooh, bacon," it's just going to be a bit clearer in that held pose as well. If we hold this a bit more, just to try and like, whoosh, then it's just all about storytelling, all about clarity, all about like using the time we have the viewer for in an efficient way and to tell the story as best we can. I think the hand here gets a little complex. He kind of like puts it down, puts the bacon down, and then kind of like goes out into like a big arc and kind of draws attention. If you look at like the fingers, I think if there's anything that can be, well, I think what it is actually is you almost put it down and then you have like a hold up here with the hand, and then you do a big spacing round. I feel like from here to getting another piece of slice of bacon out is just, one move, and that can be when you start the ease out and go into your big spacing. Do that all the way. Don't have kind of like an ease out and then a hold and then a big spacing, because it's not about like this hand pose at this point. It's just that like small difference in spacing is making it read as like he does a little gesture with the hand before reaching back, whereas it should just be bacon down, reaching for another one. The hand here feels a little broken. If you look at like the line of the hand and then into the arm, would work better if you probably got the line into kind of like doing one hand pose. If that makes sense, like the back edge of the arm should all kind of be one flowing line through the arm, through the hand, into that. Just a bit easier for our eyes to read, really. Now, I do think this pose works better than the previous pose that you had for the bacon. So I probably wouldn't go back into the same pose of like, bacon up here. I think this is cool. I just think maybe it can be pushed a little. I kind of like what you're doing with the like broken wrist. It would be cool if the bacon was maybe up there and I don't use red to draw over the red guy. Hello, the 4-new-1. This is nice how you kind of lead down with the wrists, like laying the bacon down gracefully. And then just be careful again with the hand, that we're not breaking too much in a way that's kind of unnatural. If you like bend your hand forward and back, it moves a lot. And obviously it rotates because of the way that your bones are in your forearm. But like that way, there's not a lot of flexibility. So seeing a pose like this, unless I am going like, look how much I can move in the Z axis of my hand, you basically kind of want to keep it in the same axis of your why can't I remember the word for lower arm? The forearm. The forearm. Keep it in the same axis as your forearm, unless you're waving, or unless you're demonstrating how much that doesn't move. And I don't hate that this one is like slow and he's like taking care of the bacon. It would be nice if there was just a little timing change within there, so it's maybe like slow and he's loving this bacon so much that it cooks just through his own love. It would be cool if he's just added like some kind of timing in there, which is not necessarily going like, ooh. He's not like that going, ooh, but within that maybe being like, ooh, and showing some excitement for the bacon. Just something in there to break us out of this, even if it's just a little something. So it doesn't feel so slow and cycly, I guess. And you see this slow movement with the bacon kind of going forward into what is his antic pose for chucking it up. I feel like that could just be sped up. There's no reason why he can't be doing the bacon slowly and then go into a fast antic. Even if he like is doing it slowly and then quickly goes into the pose and then kind of does like another antic to throw it up. I think going into that pose slowly is, again, just taking too long, not being as efficient with our time with the viewer as we can, and not like telling the story as efficiently as we can. Cool. The props are lovely. The timing on them feels cool. It's always satisfying seeing something like rotating in the air and then changing the kind of speed of that rotation when you hit, like it would, I guess, like it does in reality, but it's just something satisfying about that. And I don't know why it feels so good in animation to see like rotational changes on impact, like rotation speeding up on impact. It's just, I don't know, it's cool. Something to admire, I guess. Like, this is very cool. It goes into like a roll. It's nice. I think looking at the stool at the back feels like you could be faster with the initial spacing of that. So it's kind of like at the moment it's kind of like going up and then dropping down. You could kind of go doof, and then not like that, but doof. So we favor the timing at the top with maybe like hit. If I do my spacing with this pen, you're maybe here and then you're 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 here and then you're, and then you kind of slowly come back down to ooh, just pushing that spacing to make it a bit more appealing and cartoony would be cool. Kind of like you've done with with this guy. But yeah, lovely stuff. I hope that helps, Simon. And yeah, time for the next one. Got my camera set up like right above where my tabs are. So I have to duck down under the camera to see the tabs and go between them, which is fun. Sorry, I should play this while drinking. This is the next shot. This is from Anim Mason, who I think is in the chat. Hey, Anim Mason. First name Anim, second name Mason. So let's play it. Pretty cool, Mason. Or Anim, whichever you go by. Oh, it's going to be a tough one, isn't it? Thanks, Mason. I did assume that your first name was Mason. Mason. But yeah, I guess Anim Mason is kind of... Yeah, that's good. Marcus was like that in the chat, if you're still here. Anim Mason, Marcus. All right, cool. Yeah, this is awesome, man. Really enjoy this. It's going to be polished things for sure, because overall the timing is super sweet. I think we're just going to be more, I guess, learning from this and how it's done so well. But if there's anything in here we can spot, then we'll try and do that as well. So I think one thing that I guess is that, like I say, there's no overarching notes. I guess it's polishy things. So a polishy thing I notice here is the kind of isolated motion of the rotate Y of the chest. It kind of feels like that is kind of moving and the hips aren't moving at all. Marcus. Marcus was one day away from becoming Anim Marcus, and now his dream can never become true because Anim Mason did it first. You know, when I was setting up the Discord earlier, I went on chat GTP just to GPT to try and, you know, get some inspiration for ideas, and all the animation names are just taken. There is not an animation thing that sounds like animation or thing that works with animation that's like good. It's just gone. Everything has been taken. Animation Nation, Anim Nation. I'm only thinking of Nation. There were a lot on there. I said give me 100 examples, and everything that rhymes with animation is just not very good. Animation Station was a good one, but that's obviously taken because it's slightly good. But anything, so Anim Mason, I haven't heard that one before. I think it's good, much better than Anim Marcus anyway. Yeah, so we're rotating with the chest here and not rotating with the hips, which I guess is kind of a cardinal sin of animation. Is that the right context of cardinal sin? So if I flick between these two, you can see that there's no motion between these two. Actually, my drawing is not doing what your animation is doing. Guess I missed this line. So as that kind of like comes up, you want to see that counter rotation in the hips, which would be, I guess you would just want to see like a little bit of movement up this way. At the moment, it's very stuck, and that just rotating that up as, oh, it's gonna be a challenge. Let's turn on ghosting. Yeah, it would help that connection. I keep getting distracted by marks in the chat. Ugh, sorry. Yeah, I guess it's not possible to just like independently move your chest unless, I guess it just takes a lot of like ab control to do so. But even like a slight motion is going to be through the body. You know, you're kind of gonna, if they're your hips and they're your chest, if your chest then goes over here, then your hips are kind of gonna go the opposite way always. You know, if you're like stuck, if your hips are stuck in a barrel and someone's like trying to drag you out, then it's not like the barrel is just not gonna, I guess the barrel wouldn't move, but like your hips inside that. What a terrible analogy, but I guess your hips would move counter to what your chest would be doing, just to, I guess, maintain your spine. Otherwise, because it's all connected through the spine. If the top of your spine moves, then kind of the bottom needs to move as well. Otherwise, you get a broken spine. Kind of like one of those, you know, one of those snakes with all of the little segments that moves in a really satisfying way. And you just snake it. But like you can't just move, you can move one little bit, but it's all kind of connected. Again, a terrible analogy. As something that's based on a spine. Kind of like a thing that's based on the spine. Yes, the spine is like that. Let's see if we can find some more stuff like that. So I actually think here, in this very pose, you kind of get a little bit of a broken spine. It's kind of not necessarily broken, but it feels like the hips would be up, kind of like this, to, you know, give you this shape through the spine. But then, because that would need to be happening for this spine shape to make sense, it's kind of like breaks the flow through the body. So I think what you really want to be doing here is starting that translation back with this, so that we, yeah, I always like to draw like a flow line through the legs, I guess, to just help that make sense. And you see how that would kind of maintain the flow through your pose, which you just lose on for a split second as you kind of transition into this. We get a bit straight. This is all a bit straight. The first pose is obviously like a nice line of action through this, and we're going into this pose, which is again nice and compressed spine. But then through that, the spine gets straight. And when it does that, it means that there's probably something in the mechanics going a bit wrong. And so looking at that, you can now see that this is kind of like feeling a little bit off balance. And it would be more balanced if he was kind of over here. What was this torso I've drawn? And that's just awesome. The arc in the head you're getting is awesome. Really nice. It is a shame we lose it for one frame. Cool if we could just get like a bit of the yellow in there. Just so we never lose that head. Yeah, I also think in the chest section, it kind of feels like you've got the really snappy stuff down. And then in the move and hold, it just feels like it doesn't come to an ease at the end. Kind of feels like you get into the pose and then we're just kind of like traveling through that in that ease. And I just feel like that would come to like it would ease to a stop, you know. Rather than just like if it was like a dialogue piece and you were doing a move and hold, rather than kind of like moving through this to then go into this to then go into this, you would kind of like ease into this pose and then ease into the next pose. So moving holds need to kind of ease into their last pose. And you just notice it when you focus. If you like just look at these areas and play that section through, you just see that it just feels like it's just kind of like moving throughout that whole last section. All right, I'm gonna stick with the spine because I'm looking at the hands and I'm loving what's happening. But I just want to make sure that I kind of get everything I can notice from the spine. Super cool that the hips lead up here and you get this pose, which is just so fun. I love it. Looking at the arc, I feel like it could even be pushed a little bit more. I'm looking at the head here, and then the head here. I don't know. Let's see what the ghosting is doing. Okay, so the arc we have is nice. It's just feeling to me like it could potentially be just down a little more with the head, just to kind of get that. Kind of feels like we kind of go. We're not going linear here. It's still an arc. Could just continue this arc going into trying to draw it in one go. Come on, can't do it on the tablet. Yeah, it feels like this just wants to kind of like be one arc through that with the head. I like that the spacing is different. And then we pop up into this. That's super cool. Just feels like we could get that, and therefore the chest down just a little bit further, even more. Just to, I guess, further that. It's super polishy, but I don't know. When I frame by frame that, I kind of noticed that the chest and the hips almost start to come up together on this one frame, on frame 12. Once you get to here with the overlap, it's like super nice. Just feel like it could just continue to be just that little bit offset to give you that. Well, it would do two things. It would give you the arc, and it would just offset the chest and hips, which is always a lovely thing to do. Awesome. Looking at the shape change through here, I'm hesitant to give a note which is like change the shape of the spine, because this is a super well refined and really nice piece, and it feels natural, and the body mechanics when you play it just feels great. I just think through here, if you look at the shape of the spine, it kind of stays. So he's in this like fetal position the whole time with his leg. So the spine is doing this the whole time, and it never reverses ever until we can't see that spine shape anymore, which is here, and then goes into that. I feel like you could just ease a little bit of that in, so that by the time we get here, not trying to change your headspace at all, because that's working super nice. I think something like what you have, but just with a reversal in the chest, in the spine, sorry. So we get this instead of this through this pose, and kind of leading up to that. And that'll also give you a better flow through the back leg too, won't it? I think that's like that. So if you were to kind of start to ease into that, then maybe this pose would be getting into what that is, because you can kind of feel the hips like pop down here. Yeah. So I think it would be a case of like the hips starting to just drop down a little bit before the chest does. Kind of feels like the whole thing starts to move as one mass. So it's going to get messy. And I'm drawing a straight spine here, but it's not. It's obviously, I guess, just slightly curved with what you already have. So when you kind of go into... Didn't even try and draw it then. This would also chill out your headspace just a little bit. I'm not saying that the headspace needs to be chilled, but you see where on this frame the headspace starts to kind of go down on its own. It would allow it to just kind of maintain that screen space of the head, which would actually help the animation, because when we're doing this big push in, we kind of want to, the thing that we push in when we push in is the thing that we want to focus on. So when we're doing this big push in, we're not really focusing on, we're just focusing on like him in general, right? Which is great. The more we can tone down that headspace movement in screen space, at the moment we're kind of like doing a big move and then coming back to here. Like this is 1, we go to 2 here, and then we go to 3. The more we can tone it down and not have that move so much, so that we're maybe just doing a smaller arc. For example, here. Oh, this is great, because I was feeling like this pose wanted a stronger line of action as well. So if this is, I feel like you want to be here, you know? Like this is what you want, which would mean this foot is like here, which I think works with the animation you've done and actually goes into this perfectly. You know, this is kind of like starting to step back a bit here. Ooh, we've drawn an ugly leg. That's fine. Maybe that's still up. Who knows? So this is going to tone down your headspace. Help that line of action that we are kind of missing through this point, because if we turn off ghosting, because off. If we look at what this pose is now, we're kind of doing a reverse, not a reverse, we're doing a shape. We want to be doing this shape because we're coming down into this shape. Well, we're coming out of this, so we want to be going into this, ideally, just to get that shape change, get that contrast in the spine. So ideally, we would be having this, which we can get in this drawing, because in this we kind of have this shape and then kind of a different line of action through the feet. The line of action still kind of works, but it's just not as strong as the stuff around it to then feed into the final hit that you have, which I think this kind of drawing in red, I don't know, maybe you want to have this foot coming through at this point, or even a smear, you know, you could have a foot there and the foot finally plays. I don't know, maybe that would work. Yeah, that could help. Boom. Seeing if you want to go there before we go here. This will kind of lead, if you do this, into, say this is the head. It will just like resolve the spin out a bit more. Into what we have. If those drawings make sense. I hope they do. So frame by frame. And I guess this would kind of just be the pose that you already have, maybe pushed a little bit more so that that headspace can come up into that. Cool. Let's have a look at the hands. I still have some time on this one because I don't think I have any more after this. So I will have a look at the limbs as well. I think this toe kind of spinning, I feel like you could ease into it a bit more. It feels a little linear right now. It just feels like that weight can kind of slowly, or not slowly, but it could ease onto the other, like what's going on with the other foot and the body mass. And that would then like ease into the toes, starting to do that rather than it feeling like it kind of just a bit linearly goes into this. So I'd probably hold it just a bit longer. Feels like we're almost doing too much movement too soon before that weight is like fully transferred. Like the weight doesn't transfer really until kind of starts to transfer over properly on frame 8. I'm not saying keep it completely still then, because you would still get like some hock movement if this was like a horse. But I guess this is not a horse, so it would just be ankle movement. But because we can have some of that rather than all in the rotation of the Y of the foot, then that'd be cool. And it would feel a little bit more planted through that section. I also feel like it would... If you rotate that around the toe, so we're doing that instead of doing that. So that will then leave your foot in a better ending position when we take off. It'll be like back here, I think. Nope. Still missed it. But it will be back here, and then this will be in a nicer position for the takeoff. What's this drawing? Let me delete this. Draw it again. There's a foot there, and there's a leg. Yeah, because the weight's transferring over and you're taking the weight off this foot, then which then goes into the jump which you do, like that foot needs to be off because then that foot is then leading kind of a bit of the jump and the spin, like especially the spin that foot is. It would be cool, like on this frame, if this was just maybe a bit more something. So the heel is just, I've done too much there, but the heel is just starting to go. Honestly, that timing is so nice. Damn. There's a knee pop here. We kind of get stuck in this same pose. If you look at the bag, this is fine. Going into this is cool. Feels like he wants to be leading with that knee round, right? You just want to be losing that into what you kind of have. I also feel like the arc of this foot is kind of going like just a little bit linear right now. Be cool if you essentially got some compression. So I always demonstrate with my arm, but if you got a leg and you're in this kind of pose, just as you do that transition, kind of get just a little bit of compression in there, because at the moment it kind of feels like a foot or leg, which is just kind of in this pose the whole time and doesn't have any of that like compression in there. So it feels cool through here. Actually feels like he kind of needs to keep it a bit stable. But then through here, it just feels like it could compress a little more. Which would then kind of help that swing around as well. This is always how I track my legs and stuff, by the way, just always by eye. Never with motion trails. Oh, I have to dig deep for that word. I'm good at words today. But just doing it by eye and kind of like looking at the line here, looking at the line here, looking at these lines, what these lines are doing, just all of your little lines, all of your drawing lines that make up this drawing are going to be much more helpful with tracking arcs and making sure things are working than like one little point on the knee or on the leg. But looking at this, I'm sure you already do this. I'm just saying it for anyone out there that this could help. I mean, I feel like I only really had this revelation when someone mentioned it like a year or so ago for me personally. But I guess it's something I've probably always done. It's just like hearing it in that way that like, oh, your animation is made up of a series of lines and tracking those lines and how they're interplaying with each other and like the spacing difference, not only in screen space of that one part, but also how that spacing is working with the rest of it. So for example, like this arm is coming down, but if it's compressing while coming down, then the spacing of this is not going to be the same as the rest of it. So those lines are just kind of all one big interplay and stuff to track and polish up. That's the back of the foot, by the way. Yeah, and then that can work well. Yeah. I think what is really cool about doing something like that as well is you have this rotation and he's kind of doing the spacing of that rotation, and it's almost like a man moving in, just like being rotated by the world control. I know there's movement within there and shape change, but just getting these small shape changes within that whole motion is just going to kind of make it feel like something is rotating, but there's something happening within that rotation, and it just adds so much more to like what was a simple rotation. Just if I just go like that with my hands, just watching that, but while I'm going like that, it's just like another layer, and it gives you like a different spacing within your spacing, which is very interesting and just looks great in animation. So why I mention that is that, so this back leg is kind of going around and it feels like it's connected to the whole body. This leg here specifically. And that feels nice. It feels nice through here. And then I feel like it just wants to start to break away from the body as we get to here. Just a little bit more. So we're not like one-to-one with the rotation. We then start leading with that leg, which is, again, talking about things that are really interesting and fun to watch in animation. Having not a rotation, but just having a movement, and then before that movement ends, starting to lead that movement away with something else that didn't lead into that movement is super interesting and just looks great. Like if you can go from, for example, like a hip leading a movement, so you're like that, and then you go out of that with your hip leading into another motion, it's just not as interesting as if you, for example, like did that motion with your hips. I'm going to try and animate myself in slow motion but if you did that with your hips, and then when you got to here, you start then leading that motion with the head before the hips have even resolved fully. Hey, tartar sauce. Animation, I think it was your video that taught me about screen space, how it's basically 2D. Yeah, this animation is 2D, right? This is a 2D animation right here. Even though it's in 3D and it's made in probably Maya or Blender, this is a 2D animation, and we should absolutely treat this like Glen Keane would treat this, you know? Which is obviously what I'm doing. Glen Keane. So just finishing that thought on that leg. So then we can maybe start to like break away the silhouette a bit, so we're not getting behind there, and maybe even push that more. So we're fully going with that idea of leading with that leg down, and maybe down here. Who knows, maybe that changes to something like that. Now, I've exaggerated that massively. Probably doing this is too much, and where we kind of lost it a bit. But hopefully the idea of that makes sense of what I was trying to say, where we're just trying to break up the motion of that leg from the body, so we're not feeling like the leg is kind of like tied onto the body and we're just moving with it. Like the leg is kind of, don't know why I'm trying to demonstrate that with my hands, just like within that motion, like the legs are kind of doing, if we're moving like this and the legs are just like that the whole time, if we're doing that and then the legs are kind of doing that within that, it just looks so much more interesting and fun. And it's, I guess, what we do realistically as well, which is always a good thing to fall back on in animation. If it's something we do in real life and it looks good, then it's a no-brainer. So here, I feel that this back arm, talking about like looking at lines and things like that, we just get stuck for just a frame here. And I wonder if, I don't want to drag this too much because it's really nice that it gets down there. So I think stick with what you have on this frame. That's super cool. And then I think you just maybe want to go a bit further. No. Then start to come up with this frame. Redraw. And then we're going to get more flow through this arm as well. We do this. We're not going to feel so broken. I feel like you get away with this one because it's just a smear frame. If there's anything you can do to maybe like just have that even more connected, so it's one flowing line. Boom. And then obviously what we've drawn here then doesn't make as much sense. We need to and because we've had so much energy and we're kind of like we don't want to go, but we want to just, I'd almost like do a second overshoot because we've kind of like come down and we want to, you know, on that, especially like on the rotation of that. Yeah, exactly what Tartar Sauce is saying in the chat as well. Just overshoot and settle. And then it feels like you could overshoot when you get to here. You see how like between frames 31 and kind of 33, the forearm is going down, and the hand is kind of just coming down with it. Feels like you kind of want to do that sideways. Like the hand needs to just boom. And it's not saying everything needs to always be like, but just getting like realistic overlap in there, I guess, is just always gonna help. I mean, in terms of posing, I'm struggling with this because the hand is feeling broken to me. I feel like it would be cool if you could get something which is you don't want to like lose that readiness in the hand, but just feels like there's something in there which isn't quite what it's almost like needs a bend control just to get like that flow back in, you know? And then this could be like this, which is cool, and then I think this is cool. And then I personally would do like one in some negative space, so you kind of get that like, I don't know, it's just like a little appeal thing where one has just a little more negative space than everything else rather than kind of being like that. And if you look at it on the camera, it's just kind of just adds some clarity for some reason. I don't know why. It's almost like you can see the direction of that one finger and then it informs what is going on to your eye very quickly. But there's some way that can feel more connected. Just because when I look at this, I see like the same shape here as I do on this side. And if there's a way to just get something better, because this is a key pose, this is held, and just kind of get some complex against simple and straight against curve, then I think that would help. And it would also help like in knowing what to do with this like overlappy motion. I would be inclined to continue to overlap and then like settle that. He's on a huge movement, you know. We're still in one pose, but just the settling is what's telling us about what's just happened, you know. So fine to do some settling. And then just a quick note on this hand, on this side. It feels like, you know, I said about the compression in the arm. So it kind of feels like this is locked and we're just moving from this section. It would feel a lot nicer if we kind of got a little bit of compression in there. So as this compresses, then the upper arm moves with that. You can see what I mean through these frames here on this arm. So it'd be cool if this just went up slightly while this was doing its thing. Always helpful to have a frame before, I suppose. And that goes for that whole arm on that bit. For the sake of completion, I'll look at the arms in this section as well. So I'm looking at the arc of this. We kind of break the arc a little on this frame for the sake of a little clarity. I'm not sure. I think, to be honest, we can just have this out a little more so we're not breaking that. Yeah. And actually, that wants to be coming out. Getting sloppy on my drawings now. See, this pose is unclear to me what's happening in the arm. We've got a little bit of information here, and then we've got like a little bit of information here, and this. As much as you can, you want to see clear, defined limbs. Wherever you're kind of stacking things, like say this is an arm, and we just see that going into the torso, and we don't see like this. What's that? What I'm saying is you get this, you get this is a lot clearer than this. I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do this. You know, so wherever we kind of see that within our work, and this is, you're not doing it here really, but it's just stacked enough where it's not that clear when we have other poses which are like beyond clear. You know, this is perfect what you're doing here. I just think we can probably, with what the spacing's doing as well, use that to, because that's driving motion, we can use that and we can drive it up even sooner and get a clearer kind of pose. Seeing what this is doing, just making sure that we're like leading with the elbow as much as we can. Boom. Yeah, that's cool. And then you see how these drawings, they feel kind of similar what the arm is doing. I just feel like you could get some compression starting in this, you know? And then you've got like movement happening within this movement and this overall arc, which is just going to like feel super nice. And anytime you can kind of get the impression of limbs contracting and different spacings on different parts of the limb, not different spacings, but like different spacing between the different parts of the limbs rather than feeling like a stuck on limb, like it's always going to feel nicer if you can see that. And then that compression is also going to help in this moment too. So where we get into this pose where the hand is in here. I feel like you want this kind of thing, right? That's a chunky forearm, but this is kind of starting to happen here. I think for me, when you're doing like a spin or you're doing a flip, you kind of want to like tuck your hands and what they're doing, which is why I'm leaning towards having the hands kind of in here. So they're like together, and I guess it wouldn't be that clear like silhouette wise as you're doing here. But if they're kind of in and together, then you're kind of actually helping the silhouette of what the rest of the body is doing, which is like a tucked position. And we're compressing there to then come out into this kind of wide position. So as small as you can, and then but that does change the kind of idea of, actually it doesn't, because you end up in this compressed pose here. So yeah, it's cool. I feel like you just want to go into compressed pose here and then save it for here, which is super cool. Quite a few notes. Sorry for deconstructing this so much. Like Tata said, this is such a dynamic shot. I feel like I learned tons just from reviewing this now, and trying to come up with some analogies that aren't crap, but they were. But maybe it just helped me think about things in my head a little bit more, if that makes sense. To come out with crap analogies and then think about why they're crap. I'm doing it right now. Is that an analogy? No, it's just a crap point that doesn't need to be made. Thank you guys for catching the stream. I really appreciate it. Like I said, there is a Discord that I've set up now, which is where going forward I'll request, just updating that to 2 more shots reviewed, 10 down, 990 to go. So let's do those 990 shots. Post them in the Discord, join the Discord, say hello. We can chat there, and like, subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.